Welcome back to Horror Recaps. My name is Freddie, and in a moment, you're going to listen to a frightening tale narrated by me. Beware, fear awaits you. This creepy tale begins when we are introduced to novelist James Foster and his wife Em enjoying a vacation at a luxurious resort on the isolated beach of Tolka. After years of inactivity and suffering from chronic writer's block, James finds himself looking for inspiration among pristine beaches and the picturesque scenery of a tropical paradise. But one morning, while having breakfast, Em suggests they go on a boat tour of a nearby island with other tourists. However, James is not very interested in this idea and refuses to go. Instead, he heads down to the beach, where he meets a seductive and mysterious woman, Gabby Bauer. Surprisingly, Gabby happens to be a fan of the only novel James has ever published to date. And soon, she invites him to dinner along with her and her husband, Albin, that evening. Then James, along with his wife, joins the two of them for dinner, and while they dine, Em jokingly reveals that her father is the patron of James's novels and writings. Afterward, the four of them decide to spend the next day driving in the countryside, despite having been warned to remain within the resort property at all times. However, the four of them rent a car and leave the resort. After enjoying their day sunbathing and cooking, they proceed to drive back to the resort in a drunken state. On their way, the car's headlights stop working, and James accidentally runs over a local man, killing him in an instant. In a state of panic, James suggests that they call the police to help the poor man. But Gabby, having been to Tolka countless times with her husband, insists on not calling the police, as the country isn't civilized and the law is rather brutal. Albin also supports Gabby, stating that it's too dangerous for all of them, and suggests getting back to the resort. Poor James and Em are left with little option but to do as they say, and upon reaching the resort, they lie to the guards about having lost their way around and are let in. The following morning, James is met by officers at his door who come to arrest him for the hit-and-run case. They immediately arrest James and Em and take them to the police station, where the two are separately interrogated. Later, Detective Thresh walks in and recounts the accident to James before exposing the bizarre law of Tolka. He proceeds to reveal the strange local practices of the town if one is found guilty of murder, especially if it could have been avoided. The culprits are killed at the hands of the dead man's firstborn son to preserve the family's honor. And if the victim doesn't have any sons, the state carries out the execution for the family. However, Detective Thresh suggests an alternative, a bizarre yet flexible method of serving justice without disturbing tourism, where the guilty can pay a hefty fee to build a clone of themselves and have their duplicates executed in their place. James, who's married to money, opts to have himself cloned and pays the fee. Then he's led into a small cloning chamber, which slowly fills up with blood like liquid. Afterwards, James wakes up in a hospital room, and Em brings him downstairs to a high-tech lab where his clone is encased in a red cocoon. Following this, James and Em are taken to the execution arena, where the supposed clone is tied to a stake. Then, the victim's son is brought in with a knife, and he brutally stabs the clone of James, who is seen screaming, crying, and begging to be rescued. Em, who is forced to watch the execution, winces at every stab, while James shows a complete lack of empathy as he watches his clone be killed before his eyes. Moreover, James is seen smirking, indicating that he's not disturbed but rather fascinated by it. Afterwards, the Tolka government gives them an urn with the ashes of his other version, and the couple heads back to the resort. Following the execution, Em, who's repulsed and horrified, claims she wants to leave as quickly as possible, but James hides his passport and pretends to lose it before extending his stay at the resort by a week. Later, James encounters Gabby, who explains to him that she and Albin also witnessed clones of themselves executed on a previous visit to La Tolka. She then invites James to their villa and introduces him to her and Albin's friends, who have all been previously convicted of crimes in this place, and have paid to watch their doubles killed. And with this, the group warmly welcomes James before inviting him to their little game. The game, as explained by one of the men in the group, is their plan to break into the house of a resort owner for fun. Shockingly, James, who's possibly extremely intoxicated, agrees to the plan. He then breaks into what appears to be a gift shop along with Gabby and the rest of the group to steal face masks. So the whole group, including James, puts on their off-putting masks and drives up the hill to cause absolute mayhem. They then partake in a brutal home invasion of the resort owner. The group then violently assaults the occupants of that house, forcing them to their knees and tormenting them by suggesting they shoot the gun in their skull, all while still wearing the mask and laughing maniacally. Just then, a mysterious man who is seen hiding in the corner opens fire at them, during which Albin ends up being shot in the leg. The group also fires back and eventually leaves that place before heading back to the resort. The next morning, James, Gabby, Albin, and the other tourists in the group are arrested and kept in the holding room at the police station. Just then, Detective Thresh arrives and lectures them, saying that he wants to make a statement. Then he makes the guards escort James and the rest of the group to the execution area. Along the way, Albin and the others say they're ready to pay for the cloning and have their clones executed instead. Unfortunately, it seems they were never given that option, as the cops line them up and forcibly lock each of them to a block as they beg, cry, and scream for mercy. However, James struggles with the police, but they overpower him and dig his throat open while the rest of the group watches in horror as blood spurts from him. Shockingly, James is seen applauding and cheering with the group as they witness the group execution of each of their clones. Later, James walks with another urn to his villa while grinning. There, he comes across M, who is anxiously watching James transform into a monster. She becomes increasingly disturbed by his behavior and the strange customs and laws of La Tolka, so she heads back to the United States, leaving James behind. The following evening, Gabby takes James to her villa, where she introduces him to a traditional La Tolkan root drug. She claims that it's a hallucinogen and an aphrodisiac, and encourages him to take it before taking it herself. As the drug takes hold, we witness erotic sensations gradually blending together until James and Gabby are completely indistinguishable. Moreover, as the hallucinogenic trip progresses, the whole group engages in an intoxicated orgy while their bodies ooze across one another. Over the next several days, the group encourages James to give in to his aggression and primal instincts and transform him into a whole new monster. One night, they kidnap Detective Thresh and plan to make him pay for the executions. James joins the others in his villa and watches the detective on the floor with the hood over his head. Then, while he's intoxicated, James brutally assaults the detective, only to realize the victim appearing to be Detective Thresh is instead a clone of himself, made without his knowledge. He then hastily leaves the room after being horrified by his own actions, and finds the group laughing behind his back. So in a brief moment of clarity and panic, he quickly brings out his hidden passport and leaves Gabby and the rest of the group behind. The next morning, James gets on the bus transporting the resort guests to the airport. However, on the way, he finds Gabby and the group following him in their cars, mocking him at first. But the second time the car comes around, Gabby points a gun at him and fires it, shattering the bus window in the process. Then, as the bus comes to a halt, Gabby threatens to start shooting the people on the bus if James doesn't come out, and thus she abducts him from there. Now, Gabby forces James to walk while she abuses him from her car that's following him closely behind. Gabby reveals that she finds him pathetic and cowardly, and that the group has been laughing at him the whole time. Moreover, she reveals that the group has been targeting, humiliating, and abusing him for fun and their own amusement. Despite initially appearing to be a fan of James and his writing, she humiliates him by revealing that she's never read his book and taunts him with one of the many scathing reviews that the book received. Gabby continues to verbally abuse him and tries to break him down by calling him and his career as a novelist pathetic. It is implied that they were hoping to turn James into a fellow murder tourist. Suddenly, James turns around and tackles Gabby, but the group tries to fight him back, all while still laughing. So he runs off into the nearby woods, but before he could get any further, Gabby shoots him in the leg, injuring him. However, James still wanders as far as he can until he is out of sight of the group. After hours of wandering, James stumbles upon a farm and collapses. Just then, a local family notices him injured and takes him in, where he's nursed back to health. Being still dazed and drugged, he experiences a series of terrifying hallucinations. Some about the kid who executed his clone choking him, and others about M joining the group to torment him. Afterwards, Gabby and the group track him down, and they bring around a clone of James who is on a leash and being forced to act like a dog. Now, Gabby demands that James complete his transformation into a true murderous tourist, and to do so, he must beat his clone to death. Initially, James refuses to do so, but he changes his mind after the double begins to attack him like a wild animal. So, in self-defense, James is forced to fight back and ends up beating him to death by punching the clone's head into a bloody pulp. This incident leaves him distraught, and he breaks down. James curls up and sobs like a child. Next, Gabby holds James, who's now fully broken, and comforts him by wrapping her arms around him. She then exposes her bare breasts to James and has him suckle on them as a reward for becoming one of her gang. Finally, James has been reborn in gore and violence, even nursing off Gabby's breast, which is covered in the blood of the clone he has just destroyed. There is simply no turning back at this point. The next day, James calls M and apologizes for his behavior as he packs his luggage to head home. Everyone, including James, Gabby, Albin, and the rest of the tourists, board the bus to the airport. On the bus, Gabby and the others turn off the murderous characters they were on their vacation and now talk like ordinary people. While on their way back to their normal lives, they casually talk about things they need to do when they get back home, completely unaffected by the countless atrocities they committed during their holiday. Meanwhile, James is deeply disturbed and altogether more alarmed by the acts he has committed over the past few days. It appears that it was the act of killing his own clone that finally tipped him over the edge. While waiting in the airport for his flight, James decides to stay behind at La Tolka. Fully broken from the events and unable to return to normal life, he then returns to the closed and empty resort and sits alone by the pool in the pouring rain, irreparably traumatized by the experience. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thank you for watching.